I'm deeply honored to address the Cambridge College graduating class of 2006. Now, typically when I'm asked to deliver a commencement address, the first thing I do is to ask the graduates to stand and honor the parents for their many sacrifices. Don't get ahead of me now. Mom and Dad made to get you to this important landmark in your lives. I know many of you have your parents here, but because Cambridge is such a unique institution that provides educational opportunities to mostly working adults, most of you are yourselves parents. So when I look up from this podium, I see children and grandchildren of this graduating class. I see children and grandchildren who watch with real, if perhaps unspoken pride as mom or dad, grandma or granddad courageously undertook this journey towards a degree. I see children and grandchildren who watched you undertake this sacred mission at a time in life when other equally important responsibilities beckon, the demands of work and family. I see children and grandchildren who witnessed the mammoth effort and sacrifice that you invested in this monumental achievement. And I see children and grandchildren who made sacrifices of their own, who maybe couldn't spend as much time with mom or dad or grandmom or granddad as they might have wanted to in these past few years, but who also understood that this effort was as much their benefit as for your own. Lastly, I see children and grandchildren who have had the rare privilege of watching the most important adults in their lives become heroes and role models, literally before their eyes. Because in these times, there is nothing more heroic or more necessary than advancing one's education. And each of you graduates has defied every obstacle, met every challenge to personify heroism in the eyes of those who matter most of all. So I'm not going to ask the graduates to stand today. Instead, I want the children to stand. I want the grandchildren to stand. I want the spouses and parents and extended family to stand and pay tribute to your heroes and heroines. Chancellor Brown did warn me if I tried this, it was up to me to get you back in your seats. Of course, there are many others worthy of tribute here today. The visionary educators, administrators, and trustees, this institution. Let me tell you what's going on up here. I had this idea of putting duct tape to hold this thing in place. And Eileen Brown came up here ahead of time and got it all stuck together. But other than that, everything was fine. But people like your founder and chancellor, Eileen Moran Brown, she understands that life isn't like a bus schedule. Opportunity doesn't always arrive on time. Many of you are here today because higher education simply wasn't an option at age 18. Fortunately, at Cambridge, opportunity doesn't have an age limit. And for that, let's acknowledge Chancellor Brown, President Sharma, and his team, and the gifted faculty for making all of this possible. Opportunity is a watchword at Cambridge and also at the magazine I publish, Black Enterprise. Incidentally, glad to have some subscribers here this morning. Incidentally, we have more than that in common. Both Cambridge and Black Enterprise are celebrating their 35th anniversaries in 2006. Coincidence? Not really. Both institutions are products of a unique time in our nation's history, a time when the doors of opportunity were opening to Americans who traditionally had been denied full access to its promise of liberty and equal opportunity. If you'll indulge me, I want to talk a bit about that time and how it relates to the challenges that confront you as you embark on the next leg of your journey. Like many of you, I had chalked up a good deal of life experience when destiny came knocking. The chance to publish Black Enterprise came at a time in my life when they did not have jet planes. I already had 3 sons, 3 kids to support, and some of you may know that from 1965 to 68, I worked on the Robert F. Kennedy senatorial staff. It's very likely I would have followed Kennedy to the White House if not for his tragic death. This nation lost a greatness that day that will be always hard to replace. With 3 fast-growing sons to feed, I had to figure out my next move quickly. And if you ever meet my sons in the future who average about 240 pounds each, you'll understand what an urgent imperative that was. This was at the start of the 1970s in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement. African Americans were entering the business mainstream in record numbers. I felt there had to be a market for a magazine that catered to this new fast-growing entrepreneurial and professional class. And so I had a good, marketable idea, but I didn't have capital or a roadmap to follow. For one thing, I had to get through to potential advertisers who refused to believe there was such a thing as an African-American business or professional class. I had more than one company tell me to my face they didn't want their products associated with African Americans. I do not want to tell you today what I said back to some of those people. But I found motivation in the words of my late mentor and employer, Bobby Kennedy, who famously said, "There are those that look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not." I launched Black Enterprise in August of 1970. We were profitable after only 10 issues, and we have never looked back. I could have listened to my doubters. I could have given up on my dream. But I knew that the spirit of the times was on my side, just as the spirit of the times favored Eileen Brown, who looked at what was and asked, why not make the American dream accessible to every American who wants an education? The atmosphere of possibility and social change in those days was palatable, charged by a pervasive hunger for opportunity not only within the African American community, but also among Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, poor whites, women, and other long disenfranchised groups. At the same time, both Cambridge and Black Enterprise spurred social change, acting as both resource and inspiration to generations of Americans, enabling them to march confidently out of society's margins